Alright, so I went ahead and charged the system with Freon. As you can see, the compressor is running the way it's supposed to be. Well, it is very hot outside right now. It's up to like 90 degrees now, and we have 37 degree air coming out of these vents. There's down 36 degrees, 37 degrees. Alright, so we are back on the LS swapped S197 Mustang again, and what I am working on today is finishing up some loose ends before we get tuning on this thing. I want to get as much as I can get finished with what I have, so that's what I'm doing today. As you can see, front bumper's on. This is the new used front bumper, but a lot better than the V6 bumper. It has to get painted to match still. As you can see, it's slightly different color blue, but it is blue. So there's the front bumper there. This fender's got to get fixed. This headlight's got to get replaced. It's all pushed back from when this car got hit. But so what I'm working on right now is trying to get the AC system done, get the lines made, get everything hooked up, verify that it all works. For those who aren't familiar, this car has two PCMs now, so it has a Chevy PCM and the factory Ford PCM. The Ford PCM still thinks it's running the show, so it still runs everything in the car, and it will be running our air conditioning. So it comes out right here, and the wires that used to go to the AC compressor clutch are right here, so I have them labeled from the Ford AC compressor. This was the high pressure switch that was on the AC line. The low pressure switch is back there between the firewall and the back of the engine. Really hard to get to, but that's where that is. So that's all hooked up to the factory Ford PCM still, and that still functions the way it should. I tested it the other day, started the car up, turned the AC on. I jumpered the low pressure switch and plugged the high pressure switch in, and when I turn the AC button on the dash, AC compressor clutch gets power. So that's all working the way it should be. The AC system should work exactly as it did before. The only thing I've done here is when we took the V6 out, the high pressure line hooks up right here. As you can see, I have it stuck on there on the back of the condenser. The low pressure line hooks up right here to the dryer accumulator. And those were one line, and they came to a block on the old compressor. So as you can see right here, this is the block that they used to go to, and I cut them both off. So now we have the low pressure suction line turned this way. It used to go down, and we've had to finagle these lines a little bit. The aluminum bends pretty easy. If you're careful with it on the lines, you just have to heat it up sometimes, take your time and bend it. But it now bends this way, comes up around the top of the engine. So that's the original low pressure line, and then it gets cut off right here. So you can see the end of it. It's just stuck under there for now, but it comes out. This is another piece of AC line I had, and that's going to get welded on to that one like so. And then it comes down here to the factory Chevy line. So this Chevy line came off of a Chevy truck, and it goes down to the Chevy AC compressor. Comes up nice and neat through here, clears all that, and it's gonna get welded to that piece. So there's our low pressure line, kind of hard to see, but it comes around, around, around into the low pressure side. Then for the high pressure side of things, this is the factory Ford high pressure line. Used to go down, now comes this way, has our high pressure sensor. Here's the plug for that. So that gets plugged in, and then it comes over, gets cut off, and here we have a Chevy high pressure AC line. So that one comes across, goes over, down, and right in the top of the compressor. All that clears everything. So basically all that has to be done here, these two have to get nicely welded together. These two have to be nicely welded together here and here, and the AC system should work. They make couplers for joining hard AC line, but I prefer to weld them, so we're going to see how that goes. I'm sure there's somebody out there that says that'll never work, but we'll see what it does, and I'll bring you back when it's done so you can see if it works or not. What I'm doing right now is trying to get a couple final wiring things checked off the list here. So what I'm doing first is the intake air temp sensor, so that's right there. You can see the wires are hooked to nothing. Next thing we got to do after that is get the AC compressor clutch all hooked up, so the wire's got to go just from here to the Chevy AC compressor. That's not a big deal. And then the third thing on the wiring list is in the back we have an ABS sensor to put in the rear end, the 8.8, and then the pigtail that comes off of that and goes to the wires that we ran when I did the fuel pump wiring to come back up to the car to the original speed sensor wiring that's up under here. It's tucked away down in here. It's these little label plugs to try and get the speedometer to work on the dash. That's the only gauge that's not working on the dash. So first thing I'm working on right now, intake air temp sensor. This one's pretty easy. What we've got here, my PCM is a green blue PCM. And so we got the two intake air temp sensors wires that come out here. The reason I didn't have an intake air temp sensor on here is because the truck this came out of had a mass airflow sensor, and that mass airflow sensor has the intake air temp sensor built into it. So this intake air temp sensor is out of like an older Chevy truck, like an OBS Chevy with a Vortec with a Chevy 350 in it, but they have the same intake temp sensors in them. It's just not in the mass airflow. So that's this guy that we stuck in here previously. As you can see, tan and black right here. Go to the tan and black. I just added to the green PCM plug. And that is pin 25 is the tan right here, and then pin 57 is the black. At least that's what I have. I'm gonna hook it up and make sure it works. I'm just gonna temporarily hook these up to that intake temp sensor, plug it all back in, make sure I can read with a scanner the intake temp sensor, make sure it's all working. Alright, so we got this all temporarily wired up to the PCM. Turned the key on, checked it with an OBD reader. Temperature is reading 98 degrees. That is the outside temperature right now. So that is correct. So I'm going to get started on adding this relay in. So what this relay is going to do is it's going to go in line with the tan wire on the intake temp sensor. It doesn't really matter which one. And what it's going to do is it's going to be hooked to the normally closed. So when the relay is off, it will function normally as an intake temp sensor. When you give the relay power, it's going to break the signal to the temp sensor. And the PCM is going to peg to one extreme of the temp sensor, which I forget which side it goes to, but I think it's like minus 40 degrees or something. And that is going to be used for two-step to tell the PCM when to engage and disengage the two-step. That's how a lot of people do it. It's an easy way to do it with HP tuners, so we're going to go that route. So I'm going to get started on putting this in. Basically, we're going to use the normally closed side, which is on this diagram. Kind of hard to see. Pins 30 and 87A are normally closed, and then when you energize it on 85 and 86, it opens it. So that's what we're going to use. The intake temp sensor wire is going to go through 30 and 87A, and then when you give this relay power, it'll break the signal. So I'll get started on that next, and then clean all this up and get put it back. We got to run another wire inside to ground this relay to engage it, and we'll get going on that. Alright, so I went ahead and cleaned up all the wiring. As you can see here, pull this out of the way for now. There's all the wiring. The relay's tucked away nicely down here. Everything's got plugs on it. We got disconnect plugs here. We got a disconnect plug there, so everything can be unplugged and taken out. We're in the wire inside, so that all works. And I just tested it. Everything's working great. The wire comes through the firewall pass here. There's little rubber boots up and through the dash and out right here. I ran a 2-conductor wire. The red wire does nothing right now. It's just for a future if I want to add something. The black wire, if you ground it, that relay engages and it disconnects the signal to the air temp sensor, which would engage the two-step. So this is just going to get tucked away down here for now until we get to that step. The reason it's coming through the shifter is because I want a button on the shifter for the two-step. That's how I want to go about doing that. So that's that. The next step will be taking this AC wiring, which is somewhere down here labeled. This one right here that says AC compressor clutch. This pressure sensor gets plugged in right there, but this one has to be extended across and over to that plug right there on the AC compressor, if you see it right there. Alright, so the AC wiring is done. As you can see, it's nicely loomed up. Comes over, it'll get zip tied to that high pressure line as soon as they get welded together, which will be happening later today. But the next wiring thing I have on the list is to get the vehicle speed sensor hooked up. So the old one was on the T5 transmission, and the new CD009 does not have a speed sensor output on it. So what I'm doing is I'm using a rear ABS speed sensor. We're going to be coming off of that. I already ran the wires when we did the fuel pump wiring, so they come up right here. We got these 3 wires that come up from the back. This is the original trans speed sensor right here. So those get connected together with a plug. That'll go to the back of the car, and then it'll go down to a rear wheel speed sensor on the back of the car. The speedometer is probably not going to be calibrated correctly. I just want to get it hooked up and make sure that it works with an ABS sensor. And then Dakota Digital sells a little converter box to adjust the number of teeth on the rear end to match what used to be on the old transmission. So if it all works, I'll hook it up temporarily. If it all works, we'll go ahead and order one of those Dakota Digital converter boxes, and that should adjust our speedometer and get us right where we need to be. So I'll get going on that. Alright, so we have the wiring connected up front for the speed sensor. It goes back here to this bundle that we ran when we did the fuel pump relays right here. So the blue and yellow are the speed sensor wires going to the front, and I've temporarily connected them. That's why they have no heat shrink. But these go around and through a grommet right there. And then they come out the bottom of the car right there into this loom. And basically this will get tied up under the car and will go up behind the wheel into the wheel speed sensor on the back of that axle, which hooks into this plug, this little pigtail. So this goes on the end of this. This plugs into the ABS sensor on the axle. And hopefully we should get some movement out of the speedometer. And if I'm right and we do get movement out of the speedometer, I'm sure it'll be wrong because we have the wrong number of teeth on that gear. So basically the Dakota digital box I'll cut these, both these go into the box. It'll mount right here on this plastic next to these relays. And that just takes the incoming signal and alters it to match what the car used to have coming out of the transmission. Alright, so AC lines are done and welded together. I took them to a friend of mine that knows how to TIG weld really good. As you can see, there's one joint, there's the other joint, and there's the other joint. So those should be very strong. If they're going to leak from somewhere else, not from those joints. So I'm going to go ahead and try and find new seals for all the ends of these lines, and then I'll put them on the car, pull a vacuum, and we will see what happens. Alright, so all the lines are on. As you can see, high pressure comes around, hooks in right there, got our sensor plugged in. Low pressure comes up, goes across the top, goes into the dryer. I went ahead and replaced the dryer because the system's been open for like a year. So new dryer. This is the original line, didn't touch that, but this is the one that goes over the top now and down. So that's all on. Went ahead, pulled a vacuum on it. Just pulled a vacuum on it, as you can see right there. So I went ahead and pulled a vacuum on it. It's holding, seems to be holding right now. We're gonna let that sit for 30 minutes, make sure it doesn't move at all, and then we can charge the system with Freon and see if it actually works. Alright, so went ahead and charged the system with Freon. As you can see, the compressor is running the way it's supposed to be. Went ahead and put about 2.5 cans in. That's close to what is supposed to be in it. What used to be in it, 31 ounces is what it called for. And these are 12-ounce cans. This one's got a little bit left in it. But as you can see, the AC system is running. Cold air is coming out of here. The exterior temperature outside right now is 88 degrees, and the air temperature coming out of the AC vents with the recirculation turned off is 59 degrees coming out of these vents. So that's a significant temperature drop. I think 20 degrees is acceptable for an AC system, so 19 degrees, I will take it. So 58 degree air coming out of the car. As you can see, all the lines are starting to sweat. Air is cold. Turn the recirculation on, it'll probably drop a lot in here, but that is some cold air coming out of there. Let's see here, 58, 57, yeah, it's dropping pretty fast here once the recirculation is turned on, and the door's wide open still. 55 degrees, so yeah, 54 and dropping. Let's see, can we hang that there? So we'll let that run, see what it gets down to. I'll close the window here, shut the door, and see how cold it'll get in here. Alright, so it's been running for a minute with the doors closed. Turn the fan speed down a little bit, turn the recirculation on. I want to get it as cold as possible. It is very hot outside right now. It's up to like 90 degrees now, and we have 37 degree air coming out of these vents. It's down 36 degrees, 37 degrees. Compressor cycling as it should, because the cabin temperature has gone down. So the compressor is cycling on and off. It just turned on right there, you can feel it. To keep the unit from freezing up, so that's all good. Everything seems to be working the way I did it. All the factory controls work. You can turn the AC off here. Oh, we have to turn it off here. Turn the AC off, and then I can turn it back on. You'll watch the RPMs dip down a little bit. Right there, AC's on. So all the factory controls work as they should. Temperature control, fan speed, all that works, and it all acts like the Ford stuff did. So there you go. The LS swapped Mustang has cold AC. I've let it run for about an hour today, just sitting here, make sure it wouldn't do anything weird, make sure it wouldn't ice up. Compressor seems to be cycling normally. As you saw earlier, we're getting like 36 degree air once everything equalizes coming out of the vents, so that is amazing. It is super cold in here, even though it's super hot outside. All the blend doors, everything like that works like the factory did, because it's still got the Ford PCM in it. So that's it for this episode. I think that's pretty awesome that we got AC on this Mustang. There's not a lot of LS swapped Mustangs of this generation out there that have working air conditioning, so that's pretty awesome. But thank you guys for watching. I appreciate the support. Please make sure to subscribe, hit that like button. It really helps me out, and I'll see you guys next time.